Hey everybody, here's tutorial 4, and as is often the case, right around this time in the semester, students tend to have a conceptual breakthrough with the material, really stop learning it as just tech and start seeing it more as a creative, expressive tool. Obviously, there's still a lot of learning to be done, but it's a nice point in the semester where the work that comes out of the in-class projects is actually pretty interesting. So let me show you some of that work. Here's some visuals by Daniel, and the music that's playing with this is just music that I've selected to go with it. It's not the music the students were working on in class. This is Cliff Martinez brilliant soundtrack for the Nick, a brilliant television program. So beautiful composition and process there. And here's work by Ovoke. And this is sound responsive to the amplitude. And you'll see the amplitude, average amplitude of the sound modulating the position and rotation of two groups of objects in his composition. So a really nice choice here to make two groups of objects and have them separate and actually scale also based on the sound coming in addition to generating controlled randomness through the elapsed time of the audio file. Here's work by Brenda, who incorporates some rotation to very nice effect. And a composition by Sandy. Very nice use of the controlled randomness and also the control of the color of the objects. And Laureen's work. So great use of color and great use of depth in the space. Very nice. So you know, everybody really really made some terrific work in the in-class portion of the class, which was actually quite short because we covered a lot of material in class. We went over the quiz in great detail, so that's what I want to do in the first part of the tutorial today. So so the quiz was a different type of quiz than you've seen before. It was recreating an existing patch. So this patch was put up on the screen, fully visible, but parts of it are hidden. The interior of the jit.gens, the interior of p-color, and the interior of p jit.multiple and jit.gridshape are what the students were to recreate based on what they were seeing. So what they were seeing was this. And of course, the challenge of this is that the tutorial, as you know if you saw the previous tutorial, doesn't look anything like this, but it uses all the same concepts. So how do you get from the result of the tutorial, which is this row of cubes that are changing color and have the possibility of pattern, how do you get from something like this using the same tools to something like this? So this was the challenge of the quiz. And you know, it was difficult and students struggled with it, so we spent a lot of time going over it, and that's what I want to do now. How do we take the same concepts and transfer them into a new format? So as I've encouraged everyone to do, we're just going to work from the material of the last tutorial here, copy and paste as much as we can to get from what this is producing to what's being produced now. So we'll begin with the patch we built from the last tutorial and strip out elements that we know we're not going to need. So let's take a look at the quiz again, and we see that we are going to need something to play sound, and we're going to need a jit.gl.multiple going into a jit.gl.gridshape, and we don't have any texture projected onto these objects, so we can safely remove our multi-track sound reactivity here. We can remove the pattern, and that just gives us a simple row of colored cubes. And then we of course recognize right away that we're not dealing with cubes here. So what shape are we dealing with? Well, this takes, you know, this takes a bit of thought. First of all, this is curved, and if we rotate it, we see that it's flat. So circle seems like the closest shape, and then if we think of this as a circle that's been stretched as it's rotated, that makes a certain amount of sense. So we're going to take our shape and change it from cube to circle, which gives us this row of colored circles, which is quite interesting just in itself. But what else is happening with these circles in our example? Well, they're getting more and more stretched as they go. So we know that we need to do something with scale here. So right now we're setting the scale uniformly to 1. So let's not do that. Just get rid of that whole scale setup, and we'll use a jit.gen. Just try a simple transformation on the scale to see if we can get it to stretch. We can give it the same matrix that we're working with, feed it into the scale inlet, and why don't we take the normalized coordinates, we'll pull out the x coordinate, swiz x, and because our circles are all next to each other, we'll change the height of them so we can see the effect of this. So we'll vec them back together, changing the height, and let's see what that does. We gotta send that through. We can just hook this button up to the output of our frame output. just so we can see what's happening. All right, so the height is changing. It's not changing very extremely, so let's just move these a bit closer together so we can see what we're doing. And let's make a more extreme height change here, just by multiplying. Let's try multiplying it by 5, for instance. And there we see, that's a quite extreme change in height. And that is going to give us something similar to what we want. But instead of moving these along the x dimension, what we want to do is we want to rotate them. So we can actually just take away this position, because their position is not going to change, and replace it with rotate XYZ, and go into this jit.gen, and what axis are we rotating on? We're rotating on the z-axis, so we're going to take this and drop it into the z-axis, and we see, okay, we're actually getting something rather like this. The rotation is just not extreme enough. Why? Well, we were working in meters, and 10 meters is a lot of meters, but now we're working in degrees of rotation, and 10 is not a lot of degrees, so let's do 360 degrees, and there we see we've almost made the transformation. We've almost got it. So what's missing? Well, now it requires another conceptual leap. What is missing here? There's two things. There's two important differences. One, we can see as we look at this that these circles are roughed edged, so we need a higher dimensionality because these circles are very smooth. And the other thing is we just don't have enough of them. This has got more stretched circles in it than this does. So let's go back into our patch and make those things happen. First of all, we can just give a nice high dimensionality, and now look at how smooth those edges are. Those are really nice edges. Now, and to make more of them, we just make our initial matrix larger. So if we want 20 of these petals, then we change that to 20, and now we've got 20 of them. And frankly, that's probably close enough. I mean, you're not really gonna get a perfect match between what I made and what you're making without looking at my actual numbers. So then all we need to do is we need to add color modulation. We already have P colors here, and that's some noise, and we can drive that noise from, for instance, the elapsed time of our sound player. So we're sending time here. So inside colors, we can R time and start some sound playing. So it seems like it's changing a bit too quickly, and maybe it's the wrong kind of noise. Let's just try a gradient noise or simplex noise. Change the scale of it a bit. And it's just moving too fast, so let's just divide this. So we divide this by 100 and see what that does. Too much. Let's divide it by 10. Okay, now we're getting some colors changing. So, we haven't fully replicated what's here, but fundamentally we've done the same thing. We're rotating these stretched circles around a center, and we could certainly work more with it to bring this closer to this, but really the work is done because we have the fundamental transformation from the tutorial work to this new image using the same set of concepts. So what could we do here? We could try to rotate less. Rotate 180 degrees. Okay, so that's bringing us closer to what we have here. We could try to look for a color generator that's going to give us a more subdued set of colors, like the gradient. Okay, so now we're moving closer to the color palette. And we're not seeing this moving, so this may move through various color palettes. We're just seeing it in one moment. And by adjusting scale, we'll get different ways of moving through the color. So, you know, this is really quite close, quite similar. And you can see we didn't actually need to transform the tutorial very much. And that's sort of a key insight. Once you have these concepts, once you have these ideas, you can move them into very different uses and create very different images without needing to learn a whole set of new concepts. So I'm going to end the review of the quiz there, and also end this part of the tutorial, and we'll introduce some new material in the next part of the tutorial.